What a weekend of championship action we've just had, ladies and gentlemen. As always, we want to get all of your thoughts in the comments down below. In today's video, we're going to be predicting all the matches we have coming up in midweek in the championship, but we're also going to be discussing all of the games that went on over the weekend throughout the video. 300 likes on today's video would be massively appreciated. You guys have been smashing it with the support recently. And if you're not already, make sure to go ahead and drop a follow over on TikTok as well. But without any further ado, let's jump into these fixtures. Starting out, we've got a real tasty one coming up between Cardiff and West Brom, who are both coming off the back of excellent results over the weekend. Obviously, myself as a Preston fan got to see Cardiff up close and personal over the weekend, and I mean, what a result. To be losing going into added time and then turn it around with 2 goals past the 94th minute mark is absolutely incredible stuff, and sort of makes up for Cardiff losing it late on last time out in the fashion they did against Norwich. Now, it was a bit of a topsy-turvy game, to be honest. Cardiff against North End. I thought that Cardiff maybe slightly edged the first half, but neither team had that much about them. Second half, Preston get a goal against the run of play, and then a red card to Robbie Brady sort of flips the scripts and allows Cardiff to come on to us. To be honest, for the vast majority of that second half, I didn't think that Cardiff completely took advantage of having that extra man, but as soon as we went into those 9 minutes of additional time, it was just wave after wave of pressure from Cardiff, and then a real smash and grab with 2 goals late on. Now, this game won't be easy because they're going up against a West Brom side who have been on a really good run recently. They've only lost 1 of their last 6 matches, that loss being against Southampton, and in the game where I thought the Baggies actually played quite well, and they're coming off the back of arguably their performance of the season so far. A terrific showing against a really well-drilled Ipswich side who they managed to keep at bay, keep a clean sheet against, score 2 goals, and had it not been for Matt Phillips missing one of the chances of the season, could have been a 3-0 victory. Score prediction in this game, I can see both teams getting on the score sheet, but I think it's West Brom who I'm slightly edging towards. It's been a terrific run they've been on recently. Carlos Corberán continues to deliver, and for a score prediction, I'm going to go 2-1 West Brom in that game. Next up, we head to Coventry up against Plymouth, and this one should be an entertaining game against 2 sides coming off the back of cracking results over the weekend. Plymouth with a great result against Sunderland, Morgan Whittaker with the pick of the goals in that game with an absolute belter from outside the box. A clean sheet for that defensive line as well, which will do their confidence the world of good, but that Plymouth backline will have to be on top form against this Coventry side who have looked sharper, especially since switching to that 4-3-3 formation of late. It was a cracking result against Millwall over the weekend. A lot more attacking intent about that Coventry side, plenty of chances, and if they carry that same momentum into this game, I'd fancy there to be a few goals scored in this game. While Plymouth have generally kept their performance levels fairly consistent this season, they've not quite had that reward for their away performances so far this season. Still just 1 of 3 championship clubs yet to win a match on the road this season, and while Coventry have been fairly up and down for consistency all year, they've only lost 1 match at home this season, so I do think it is the home side who I'm slightly favouring in this game, despite Plymouth's excellent performance over the weekend. Score prediction in this game, I'm going to fancy Coventry for back-to-back wins, you know. I'm going to go 2-1 Cov in that game. Just have a good feeling about them after that Millwall result. Next then for Hull up against Rotherham. 2 sides coming off the back of draws over the weekend. Rotherham with a cracking point against Leeds. We all said how tough it was going to be for the Millers going into that game against Leeds without a new permanent boss and all the turbulence that's gone on behind the scenes over the international break. But a real spirited display, and Rotherham really have had something about them this season when it comes to taking points off those sides in and around the top half of the table. This season, they've taken points off Preston, Southampton, Leeds and Ipswich, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were a tricky customer for Hull in this game. Now, Hull involved in a real topsy-turvy game over the weekend, a 2-2 draw against Swansea. Real game of 2 halves. Hull found themselves 2 goals down at half-time, but a spirited second half display saw them getting back into it. Jayden Philogene is absolutely the man on fire right now, and arguably one of the best players in the Championship at this point. In his last 9 matches, he's produced 9 goal contributions. Now, the difference for Rotherham is whether or not they can take that template of a performance they had against Leeds and take it into their away matches. That's really been their Achilles heel so far this season, and that will be the determining factor between whether or not they survive this season. I've got a feeling that this game could be fairly similar to Hull's game against Huddersfield before the international break, where the away side looks to come with a defensive game plan and frustrate Hull. It's just a question of how long they can hold out for. I've got a feeling that Philogene may be able to make the difference in this game again. Score prediction, I'm going to go 1-0 Hull for this fixture. Next up then to Middlesbrough up against Preston. It's two sides looking to bounce back from disappointing results over the weekend. Middlesbrough involved in a bonkers game against Bristol City. Did fight their way back into that game from 2 goals down, but lost it late on, with Bristol City hitting them with a sucker punch from a set-piece situation. Is that sort of avenue where I see Preston maybe looking to take advantage, but I do see goals being scored in this game. Preston have now conceded 20 goals in our last 9 championship matches, and we were hit with that real sucker punch against Cardiff, some key refereeing decisions going against us, and to be honest, I thought for the vast majority of the second half we had defended fairly well with 10 men, but it's been a common occurrence for us this season for those little mistakes and gaps at the back to end up costing us, and in the end that's what happened in that game against Cardiff. Now, no clean sheet in the last 12 championship matches for Preston, and on that sort of evidence and how dodgy Middlesbrough have been at the back at times this season, I do see a fair few goals being scored. Certainly both teams getting on the score sheet here. Preston still just about holding on to a spot in the top 6 right now. That's what Middlesbrough have to have in their sights, and with all that being on the line, I think I can see Middlesbrough sneaking this one. Score prediction in this game, and I know they weren't quite at it against Bristol City. I think I am favouring them with the home advantage here. Score prediction, I'm going to go 2-1 Middlesbrough, reluctantly. QPR up against Stoke is next up, and while we are seeing some more positive shoots from QPR in terms of performance levels, we've not seen that translate into results yet under Cifuentes. 3 games in charge, 2 draws and a loss. In that game over the weekend against Norwich, they did have plenty of the ball but struggled to translate that into clear-cut chances, and that's been the real overriding problem with QPR so far this season, that lack of goals. Just 11 goals scored so far this season. They've only had 3 players that have scored more than 1 league goal, and those 3 players are Kenneth Powell, a defender, and then 2 holding midfielders in Andre Dazelle and Jack Colback. When you don't have your players in the final third chipping in with those goal contributions, you're always going to run into troubles. It's been Lyndon Dykes who's been the figurehead going forward of late. He's only scored 1 goal so far this season, and that right there is where the problem lies. With that being said, this could be a decent opportunity to pick up some points against the Stoke side, who look nowhere near their best against Blackburn over the weekend. Stoke have been on a decent run of form heading into the international break, but as we usually see, the international break can be a bit of a momentum flipper, and that was certainly the case for Stoke, who lost 3-0 against Blackburn. Score prediction in this game, I think I see it heading towards a draw, if I'm honest. I'm going to go for a 1-1 between these two. Next then to Watford up against Norwich. Norwich did make it back-to-back wins with all 3 points against QPR, albeit not in the most convincing of fashions. It didn't look like. It was a delicious through ball from Gabriel Sara to set up the goal, and Norwich definitely do have those match-winning players who can make a difference, but the overall cohesive system hasn't been that convincing of late, even in those 2 matches that Norwich have been on the winning end of. Now, Watford coming off the back of a real tough afternoon against Leicester. I actually thought that Watford did fairly well to hold out as long as they did against that Leicester City side, but ultimately their quality told, with Jamie Vardy scoring a brace late on. Watford will be without Daniel Bachmann for this one, with him serving a suspension after he was sent off in that clash against Leicester. With that being said, I think it is Watford who I'm slightly edging towards in this game. They've been decent value for money at home of late, unbeaten in their last 3 home matches. Was a thumping 5-0 win against Rotherham they had before the international break, and while Norwich have won their last 2 matches, I've still got a few overriding question marks over them. Score prediction in this game, I'm going to go 2-1 Watford and edge them for all 3 points there. Next then we go to Blackburn up against Birmingham. Blackburn with a fantastic result, 3 goals against Stoke, and probably that's what they've been in need of and probably deserved. Before the international break, there were a few occasions where Blackburn had put in a really good performance but hadn't always got the reward for it in terms of an actual result. They got that against Stoke, and I'm sure that'll do their confidence the world of good, and to be honest, I think they'll probably fancy their chances going up against Birmingham in this game. Wayne Rooney finally got his first win as Blues boss loss over the weekend against Sheffield Wednesday. Not in the most convincing of fashions though. Certainly in the first half it looked like Sheffield Wednesday had outplayed Birmingham, and Blues were actually quite fortunate to go in at half-time level. They did make some tweaks in the second half though, and eventually managed to turn that around with a much better showing in the second half. With that being said, still have some question marks over Birmingham, obviously. Beating Sheffield Wednesday right now isn't much of a flex, and I do think Blackburn have had a bit more about them recently. Score prediction in this game, I'm going to go 2-0 Blackburn. After that, we travel to Ellen Road for Leeds up against Swansea, both sides drawing over the weekend. Leeds taking an early lead against Rotherham. Nice goal from Somerville. Looked like Leeds would be out of sight after that point. They continue to pile on the pressure, but Rotherham striking just before half-time and then managed to hold out for a point. Frustrating result for Leeds, but in a league as unpredictable as the Championship, those results regularly do pop up, especially on the back of an international break, which is something that we mentioned in the preview. Now, they're going up against the Swansea side, who I thought looked really good, played some nice football in that first half against Hull, but as soon as Rossini made those changes in the second half, Swansea just didn't quite adapt to them. Seemed like they were then regressing deeper and deeper in that second half until Hull's pressure ultimately told. So, bit of a disappointing one given the lead that Swansea got into in that game. I think that Leeds will be out for vengeance in this game after the disappointing way they dropped points against Rotherham. And for a score prediction in this game, I think I do fancy Leeds to bounce back to winning ways. Score prediction, I'm going to go 2-0 Leeds in that game, maybe with the Joel Perreault strike. After that, to Hillsborough for Sheffield Wednesday against Leicester. It's top going up against bottom. Leicester, one of the best sides we've ever seen at this level, going up against Sheffield Wednesday, arguably one of the worst we've ever seen. Surely this should only go one way, but at the end of the day, this is the Championship, and what would be more typical of this league than to Sheffield Wednesday to pull a rabbit out of the hat in this game. To be fair to Wednesday, that first half performance against Birmingham was arguably some of the best football they've played all season. Frustrating that they went in at half-time not leading, having conceded right before the half-time whistle went, and obviously Birmingham then got their act together in the second half. With that being said, this is going to be an incredibly tough game against Leicester, who looked really good against Watford. No, it took them quite a while to get that opening goal, but generally speaking, looked like another dominant performance from the Foxes. Vardy on target with 2 goals in that game, and for however unpredictable this league can be, it's hard not to see past the Leicester thumping in this game. Score prediction, I'm going to go 3-0 Leicester in this one. After that, we head to St Mary's for Southampton up against Bristol City. Southampton dropping points against Huddersfield over the weekend. Bit of a disappointing result given how dominant they looked in the first half. They didn't quite carry that same attacking threat about them, it seemed, in the second half. Didn't kill it off, and ultimately this time it was Southampton who were susceptible to conceding a late goal, where it's usually them that are scoring the late winners. This will be an interesting match going up against Bristol City, who got their first win under Manning over the weekend, a game which really seemed to spark into life after Bristol City scored that opening goal, and what a strike that was, by the way. But 3-2 win over Middlesbrough. Thought we saw some real good play from Bristol City in that game, whilst also seeing a few vulnerabilities with how Middlesbrough got back into that game in the second half. I can see both teams scoring in this one. It is worth remembering the unbeaten run that Southampton are currently on. Now 9 games unbeaten, Russell Martin's men are. I think I give them a slight advantage in this game as well. Score prediction here, going to go 2-1 Southampton and back them to get back to winning ways. Next then we go to the Stadium of Light for Sunderland up against Huddersfield. Not the best of results for Sunderland over the weekend. A 2-0 loss against Plymouth now makes it just 2 wins from Sunderland's last 7 matches. Not exactly playoff form right now, but this could be a decent opportunity to get back to winning ways. Now, to be fair to Huddersfield, they did well to fight their way back into that game against Southampton. It looked like the Saints had absolutely dominated that first half, but Huddersfield putting on a bit more of a press in that second half, looking to be a little bit more aggressive, and that's ultimately what I'm looking to see more of from them from the off, and not going in with that, incredibly defensive game plan, perhaps from minute 1. With that being said, I think overall it was a decent weekend there for Huddersfield, especially with QPR QPR and Sheffield Wednesday both losing. They've gained a point on those two sides and have maintained their lead over Rotherham, which is ultimately what it's all about for Huddersfield right now, maintaining that gap between themselves and the teams below them. This is the sort of game where I do see Sunderland having quite a few opportunities. I can see Huddersfield looking to be quite defensive away from home, but there have been examples throughout this season so far where Sunderland haven't taken advantage of their superiority. Thinking back to that game against Swansea, especially before the international break, where they had about 25 shots and 75% possession but just couldn't find a breakthrough. If Huddersfield defend well for large chunks of this game, I could see them frustrating Sunderland. But if Sunderland do manage to capitalise on that early pressure, then I'd probably see them getting all 3 points. Score prediction in this game, I think it is Sunderland who I am edging towards. I'm going to go 2-0 Sunderland in this game, but Huddersfield could throw a spanner in the works if they are up to their best defensively. Then to end things off at Portman Road, we've got a great matchup between Ipswich and Millwall. It was Ipswich losing over the weekend against West Brom, just their second loss of the season. Not quite at their best in that game. Overall, I don't think it was the worst weekend for Ipswich though, as both Leeds and Southampton also dropped points, and so they still boast a decent lead in that second position that they continue to hold on to. This will be a really interesting matchup against Millwall, who we've seen look brilliant against Sheffield Wednesday, but then get absolutely undone against Coventry under Joe Edwards so far. Now, I think that the result was probably a little bit harsh on Millwall, given the reflection of that full game against Coventry. Cov obviously came with a really good regimented away performance, caught them out on a few breaks, and despite the possession that Millwall had and some of the chances which they couldn't take advantage of, it was just Coventry who looked the sharper outfit on the day. Away from home, Millwall have also been a lot more effective than they have been at the Den this season. It's important to remember that Millwall are unbeaten in their last 6 away matches, but we also tend to get served up more goals from Ipswich when they're playing at home as well. So with all that being said, Millwall still betting into this new style of play. I could see a few goals being scored either way in this one. The vulnerabilities that Ipswich have had this season have mostly been defensive, and while they didn't score against West Brom, I do fancy them for a couple in this game. Score prediction though, going to go for an entertaining 2-2 draw in that game. Well guys, there we have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure to get your score predictions for the midweek matches in the comments down below. Other than that though guys, if you did go on to enjoy, do leave a like, and I'll see you all in the next one.